Vile Game by BleedingEquine. The tags for the story are gore and thriller. Berry Punch has Vinyl Scratch at her mercy, all tied up and nowhere to go. The ponies that star in the story are Spitfire, Vinyl Scratch, and Berry Punch. Vile Game, with 1,376 words. Another day. An inconceivably awful and normal day. Just like any other. It was kinda neat to find that nothing mattered. As quiet and shameless as it ever was this day. Too bad there wasn't enough time to feel any better about yourself. Only for the smallest amount of time, you could finally be somewhat happy. There isn't anything more delightful than the urchin that sits next to you and stares at you with mercy in their eyes. Watching this little cockroach breathe gives a sensation that when coupled with the burning hatred that burrows within, you just want to scream. At any other rate, it was nice to finally be able to have a friend beside you. Of course, it wasn't like she cared or anything. It was just another helpless pony that expects something in this world. In a small room somewhere in a basement, there were packages strewn over the floor and an old basement light overhead. Vinyl Scratch was tied up on a chair and seemingly struggling to get free. The fear in her face was ever present with the dried-up tears she had. She knew that she was utterly incapable of getting free from this little spot she was in, nor how she could allow this mare to drug her and incapacitate her. It all started in a bar, some place that she felt was safe to her. There was no inclination that any of this could have happened. Then she came up, dared her to do a drinking contest, and lost, to which they both were going to go home. Harmless was everything she expected, a nice mare friend and a night at the bar. And everything went sour. Not even a chance, and she was tied up in this surprisingly dark place. Even the light above the head wasn't strong enough to give a better view. Worst of all, she had that mare watching her with that stupid grin, just sitting in the chair and smiling with what gratification she must have had. That dirty, lying, and deceitful Berry Punch. From that opposite direction, Berry pulled out from her chair and went into the deeper reaches of the basement that were too dark to see. The loud footsteps from the wooden floorboard made Vinyl Scratch shake and struggle on the rope and gag that kept her from being freed. Then, Vinyl stopped. She could hear something coming from deep in there. It was the loud and grating sound of metal grinding against each other, over and over again. From the shadow of the basement, she came holding two large knives, standing precariously on her hind legs. Berry Punch looked at her captive and paused her grinding. "Ready for your reward?" she said with a jaunty grin, placing one of the knives down on the chair she once sat on. "I always give my competition a consolation prize." Berry Punch went up to the lowly and distraught Vinyl and grabbed the top of her head with a firm grip. She raised the knife up and slammed it down onto Vinyl in an effort to kill her. But in a twitch second, Vinyl was able to move out of her captor's aim and instead misdirect the slice into her shoulder, cutting the rope off that restrained her left arm. Now free, she slammed her hoof against Berry Punch with what force she had, sending her spiraling to the ground. The once captured pony grasped the knife that cut into her shoulder and removed it. The pain was excruciating, but she was able to pull it off with one jerk. She gave a scream with the blade released from herself, and a bit of blood seeped off of her. The floor was stained with a bit of her essence. Vinyl cut the gag off from her face with one quick swoop. It fell to the floor with a thud. Berry Punch stood up and picked herself up with the chair she was sitting on previously. She groaned and grabbed the knife on her chair, running for Vinyl Scratch with a savage cry, arm held high with the blade so ready for stabbing. Vinyl Scratch readied herself and went into a stance. Berry lunged forward with a powerful force and cut the air as her foe deftly deflected the blade. In return, Vinyl went and stabbed into Berry Punch's chest and made a deep cut. Damaged, she backed off, holding the wound with her right hoof. She could only breathe hectically at the pain taking over her mind. Then, Vinyl ran forward and gave a head-first dive at her. In return, Berry fell back and sliced a bit off her back leg. sending her flying to the wall and dropping her blade. With a scream, Berry Punch charged at her opponent and went for the head, to which Vinyl Scratch caught with what strength she could muster. The knife shook from the force the two were exerting on each other, her blade nearing Vinyl's eye socket. Berry Punch gleefully smiling at her prey. Vinyl suddenly let go of the blade and let it hit the wood to which it got stuck in. With one quick motion, she slammed her hoof on Berry's jaw and grabbed the blade from the ground, to which she stabbed it right on her forehead. It looked like some kind of unicorn horn before Berry slid down the blade, her eyes blank with surprise and stuck forever in the same position. It was entirely sure that Berry Punch was dead. Vinyl Scratch rose up, breathing a heavy breath from what she had just endured, her opponent laying still on the ground with a puddle of blood growing from her open wound. The living unicorn dropped the knife and went down the basement, exhausted. Exiting the home with a tired slump, she went into Ponyville streets and screamed an agonizing cry. Doors opened from the highest reaches of Ponyville buildings to notice the fallen unicorn before them. Vinyl Scratch fell to the ground with a scent of consciousness on her. Vinyl Scratch opened her eyes. The sunlight lit up the room, and she felt calm. She tried to turn up from the hospital bed she was in, but her wound kept her from any real movement. She sat in the bed and noticed some pony familiar laying next to her. It was Spitfire of the Wonderbolts, watching her silently. "You're awake? Good," she said. "Are you going to be fine?" Vinyl gave a sigh of relief. She knew that everything was going to be okay now. "You don't have to speak, but thanks to you, we know where all those ponies have been disappearing have gone off to." Vinyl looked at Spitfire. It was a terrifying experience for her and almost entirely unpleasant, but now that it was over, she could finally breathe easy. It was nice. "What do you mean, missing ponies?" Spitfire looked at her with a sour gaze. She scratched her head with unease. "There are over 40 corpses in that building. There have been so many unexpected disappearances over the years, and now we have finally found where they're all gone." Her eyes flared up at the realization that she would have been next. She couldn't believe that a serial killer had been living in Ponyville for this long. "Just get some rest. You're safe now." Vinyl closed her eyes and tried to sleep with what pain she felt. What a night it really was. She couldn't believe that such a creature like Berry Punch could live in Ponyville of all places. It really was something that was unexpected. The soft cushion of the bed and the morning tweet of the birds played onward from nature's symphony. Sleep consumed her in seconds. You didn't resort to sex, so it's up there. Like on a 1 to 10 scale, you got like a 5.5. It's the best I can muster, really. This is the best I can do.